Let's talk about transportation. How is this disruption unfolding as we speak? So back to Clean Disruption, my book in 2014, this is the exact same cost curve that I published for 200 plus mile electric vehicles. And what I said was that over the next few years, the cost of a 200 plus mile electric vehicle is going to drop along this line. Not every EV, of course, there are going to be EVs in many categories, right? Luxury and so on, but the low end is going to go at that cost curve. Guess what? I was trolled. I was told, you are smoking something, right? And can I have some? But in fact, it's happening more or less exactly as I predicted. In fact, it may be happening even faster, despite COVID and despite many things that have happened because society has been pushed out of equilibrium. So, but think about it. Look at this cost curve and think about 2025 or 6. What the cost curve in Clean Disruption predicted was that the market would offer a 200 plus mile electric vehicle by 2025 for about $10,000. Think about it. When I made that prediction, EVs such as the Tesla Model S were $80,000, $100,000, $120,000. The idea that there would be an electric vehicle that was $10,000 ever, right? A tenth of the cost of Tesla Model S at the time was just considered insane. And guess what? Geely announced it. Geely announced a new SUV, 200 mile, precisely as I predicted, for less than $10,000. It's a 4-meter long SUV. I mean, this is a middle class SUV. And it's happening even faster than I predicted. And even in 2014, the mainstream thought that this would happen in the 2040s, not 2020s, right? 2040s. The mainstream was wrong by about 20 to 30 years. Cost curves are like gravity, right? I don't care what your opinion of gravity is. That is settled science for more than 400 years, right? So the cost curves are going to keep happening. The only question is how fast, not if, right? So now we're seeing 10% new vehicle sales are EVs in the major markets, in China, in the US, and in many places in Europe, 10%. And it's looking like an S-curve, right? So every single mainstream analyst was wrong. So this is a phase change disruption, right? So EVs, EV powertrains can last 500,000 miles. The gasoline vehicle only lasts 140,000 miles. So in fact, new GM and Tesla vehicles last 1 million miles. So that's 3 to 7 times longer lasting than the internal combustion engine vehicle. Now, individuals only drive about 10,000 miles per year. Why would we want a 500,000 mile or 1 million mile vehicle? You know, it would take 50 years to drive such a vehicle. And you know, we don't own cars for 50 years, unless, of course, you live in Cuba. But fleets do. Fleets can drive 100,000 miles per year. So over 5 years, a fleet car, whether it's a Hertz or Amazon or Uber, over 5 years, they can drive 500,000 miles, which means that over 5 years, they would need 1 electric vehicle or 3 internal combustion engine cars. So fleets now have to go electric for purely economic reasons, right? Because it's already a third of the cost per mile of internal combustion engine transportation. And that's even not even considering the cost of energy and the cost of maintenance and so on, right? So this is not a one-to-one substitution. EVs are superior. And that's why you're seeing companies like Amazon go all in on electric vehicles. Now, they will say that they care about climate, right? They would say that they care about green, but we know the reality. They care about green, this green, right? But that's fine as far as EVs is concerned, because EVs on a per mile basis for fleets are already cheaper than internal combustion engine automobile. And for individuals, another reason to buy an EV is that you can power your home with an electric vehicle. Try that with your diesel truck or gasoline truck. The new Ford F-150 Lightning, for about $40,000 sticker price, can power your home, the home of the average American, for 3 full days. Think about it. I mean, we're getting more and more outages all over the world. But here in California, we're getting outages. In Texas, we're getting outages. And it's getting worse. Now, EV I just talked about phase 1 of the disruption of transportation. Phase 2 is coming. And phase 2 is when level 4 autonomous technology is approved by the regulator, is ready and approved by the regulators, right? So we're starting to see many companies that have level 4 out there. Baidu is doing 300,000 rides per quarter. That's what they recently announced. And there are dozens of companies pursuing autonomous technology. All we need is one. This is an operating system, right? And if we look at the history of computing, essentially you're going to get 2 operating systems. So think about it, Windows and Mac. Think about iOS and Android. You get 2 operating systems because of network effects. Now, you can add a third that is open source, like Linux, right? But no more than that. All you need is one. The first company that is ready and is approved, essentially they're off to the races. And because of network effects, they're going to eat everything. It's not going to be number 4. According to Tesla, Teslas with autopilot are already almost 9 times safer than the average American driver. If everyone drove a car with autopilot, we would save 900,000 lives globally every year. And this technology is improving exponentially. In fact, in 2017, I did the numbers, the capability improvement rate, and I and my brilliant co-author, Jamie Arbib, predicted that by 2022, the autopilot would be 10 times safer than the average American driver. We still have 3 months to get there, but it's just about there, right? And supercomputing power, which is what you need for autonomous technology, is improving super exponentially. So just to give you an idea, in the year 2000, the world's most powerful supercomputer, 1 teraflops, about $50 million, and it was the size of this theater. 1 teraflop, $50 million, the size of this theater. By 2016, an 8 teraflops GPU cost $600, and you could hold it in your hands, right? That's a 650,000 time improvement in just 16 years. That's how quickly supercomputing is improving in cost and capability. And in fact, if you buy an iPhone, a new iPhone or iPad, it includes a GPU, a 15 tera operations per second GPU, 15 for free. And AI is improving double exponentially, not just exponentially. Hardware is improving exponentially, software is improving exponentially, AI is improving double exponentially. So over this weekend, I designed what looks like a painting, right? Using an AI called Midjourney. And I essentially told the AI to paint San Francisco with Denali, Alaska, in the background, with starry sky and so on. And this is what it came up with. I did this in minutes, right? From beginning to end. Creation, art creation, will never be the same again because of AI. AI is improving double exponentially. Anyone who tells you that we're not going to see level 4 autonomy over the next few years essentially is not looking at the evidence, right? So phase 2, the real disruption of transportation, is what we call transportation as a service, or TaaS. And it's on demand. On demand is essentially an Uber that you can call on demand. Autonomous and electric, owned by fleets, not individuals. Why fleets? Because a fleet can drive 100,000 miles or even more, or up to. Why? Because a fleet can drive 100,000 miles per year. They can utilize an electric vehicle fully, unlike individuals who only drive 10,000 miles. So when TaaS is out, when level 4 autonomous technology is approved by the regulators, the cost per mile of transport as a service is going to drop to 10 times cheaper than individually owned cars. Any car, even electric vehicles, right? The idea of individually owned cars is essentially going to go away. 10x has always enabled that disruption. Every single time in history, a 10x improvement in cost and capabilities has always enabled the disruption, and a quick disruption at that. So, and in fact, with the million-mile EV, this 10x is actually may well be 15x. But think about just the 10x. When it's ready and approved, TaaS is not just going to be 10 times cheaper than owning a car. It's going to be 4 times cheaper than just the operating costs of an existing car. So essentially, if your uncle gave you a car, a gasoline car, so you got it for free, the costs of operating that car, gasoline and maintenance and so on, are going to be 4 times higher than the cost per mile of TaaS. It's over, pretty much, right? And that's going to enable a major phase change disruption. And of course, when I published this, again, trolls said, you're smoking something, right? Not going to happen. But in fact, within a year of me publishing that report, which was 2017, Elon Musk essentially said, more or less the same thing, that their cars were going to drive 1 million miles, and it was going to cost about 18 cents per mile, which puts it in the same neighborhood as my previous prediction. So the car itself will be transformed from a low utilization, cash burning liability to high utilization, cash generating asset. So that's a major transformation, right? In fact, transport as a service is going to be so cheap that If you take the cost of just gasoline, the cost per mile of gasoline is going to be higher than the total cost of transport as a service. So if you add up the cost of the car and the cost of the maintenance and the cost of energy and so on, and you add it all up, the cost per mile of TAS total will be cheaper than just the cost of gasoline on a per mile basis. Gasoline is gone. Internal combustion engines, gone, right? And that's going to happen quickly. How quickly? Well, we expect that by 2030, 95% of passenger miles will be electric. And the implications, of course, are stunning. So for the oil industry, in 2017, Jamie Arbib and I predicted that, by 2030, oil demand would drop by about 30 million barrels, and the equilibrium cash cost at 70 million barrel demand globally would be about $20 to $25 per barrel. And of course, that was considered insane. And guess what happened 2 years ago? Oil demand during COVID dropped to 70 million barrels per day. And the cost went down to $20. In fact, it briefly went down to minus $20, negative prices, right? So that is just the shape of things to come. Now, of course, this has dramatic implications, right? Because what happens when we hit peak demand for petroleum? 2019 seems to have been the peak. In fact, the government of Russia said, yep, we hit the peak. We may never sell that much petroleum again, right? What happens when an extractive political system that fully depends on fossil fuels, right, and is also aggressive and expansionist? What happens when they see peak demand of energy in the rearview mirror? They get aggressive. So in a military think tank in 2016, here's what I asked the generals. My question to them, after saying that we're going to hit peak demand for oil around 2020, I asked, do we have a plan for Russia? Do we have a plan for Russia in the early 2020s? Now, I did not predict that they would invade Ukraine per se, right? But it was obvious to me that they would get aggressive and invade somebody.